everybody for coming out. And this year's the Flyer States, we decided to explore some of the ancient African civilizations because, as the flyer says, knowing the past opens the door to the future. But before we delve into that, we are going to have Sister Cash and Sister Winter come up with a presentation for us. Cash is the Cash is a third grader, Winter is a sixth grader of performing arts, and the person that she is going to do what she did in school is Madam C.J. Walker.
Hi, my name is Madam C.J. Walker. I was born 1867. Hi. Hi, my name is Madam C.J. Walker. I was born 1867, December 23rd, Delta, LA. I was the first Black American to make pressing oil and glossary for people who had short hair and make their hair long. And see her down here, her hair is very puffy. And I use my hot combs to make her hair very straight. And these type of hot combs, the first hot curler was made in Solomon hair per in 1930. And some people put the hot comb on the stove to make the hot comb warmer to make your hair straight. 2020, the person I invented hair products, which is, it holds like your hair. It holds your hair up, and as you can see, this is my daughter, and that's me.
And here's, hold this one. And here is some examples of things that hot combs and my hair products could make people hair do. So like, put it up. So like, well, for recent time, in fact, the flat iron could make heart buns, and then one prime example is my mom, and this is her hair using a flat iron and curlers. So, and also pixie curls, which can be made basically by hot combs and curlers, and you need grease to do them type of things, or it's going to be dry. And
And I made heart buns. Royalty crown was invented 1934. It was something like, it was grease, or you could use it for your edges. It's like pomade, and it's a recipe from my ancestors. it was for like Greece and just Greece. And there was another hot cone. It was invented 1867, same day I was born. Don't be funny.
Oh, well, I think we're done here.
Yeah.
Give them a hand. Give Pastor Spencer a hand. Great job, ladies. And for y'all who don't know, also Ma'am J. Walker was the first Black woman millionaire. Our products. She's making our products. So as Pastor kind of mentioned in the introduction, is how they try to erase a lot of our history. And we have a tendency in America, which is no issue, to start from captivity to slavery in America, which is fine, but I wanted to do a little different than that, so we're going to do a recap a little bit. If y'all remember from last year, we had Pastor Thelma Sorrell, Sister Dolores Taylor, Charles McCullough, Walter Hawkins, and my mom Minnie give us an overview of what Jesus meant to them and how he helped carry them over and things of that nature. We also talked about the historical aspect parts of Cincinnati. Nope, that was the year before, I just lied. So we talked about the slave Bible, slave laws, Jim Crow, the Black church, how the Black church evolved. So hopefully y'all remember a little bit of it last year. And our 2023 program, that's what we supported Black businesses. We did local Black history. We also involved a little bit with Jim Crow laws, and we had a lot of the kids doing different people. We had Percy LaVon Julian, Lucy Diggs Slow, Jenny Davis Porter, which is the school downtown that a lot of people probably know. Darwin Turner, who was the guy at UC.
Youngest graduate. Youngest graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got his scholarship, right?
Yeah.
Him, Jackie Robinson, Maya Angelou, Ruby Bridges, and there's a lot of other people too. And that's when we highlighted different places. So that's the John Parker House, the John Rankin House in Ripley, Ohio, which is about an hour from here. Also the Harriet Beecher Stowe House in Walnut Hills. If y'all haven't been there, it is an open facility that you can visit and learn more about her. We also went into a little detail about how Black History Month started and different things of that nature. And we also did a lot of a flyer about African American first and things like that. So, you're gonna ask why are we recapping? Because you gotta know where you've been and know where you're going. And so, we are gonna explore a few of the African civilizations, very few. Africa is a huge continent, so it's impossible to fit everything into this little program. But before Europeans changed the dynamics of the relationships that were previously built on common human interests such as education, agriculture, astronomy, and other important issues, a lot of people in ancient civilizations, they worked together. They did not keep information separate. And a lot of people, Africans, supplied that knowledge to Africa and the whole world. So, I just want to emphasize that. So I'm not sure is anybody familiar with this book that came before Columbus? Anybody? Pastor, you were? Okay. So they came before Columbus, Dr. Iris Satima. It was controversial because he came with the theory that proposed that we were already in America, before Christopher Columbus came. So he wrote a whole book about it. It's a very interesting read. It's very good. And he argues the presence and influence of Africans in the Americas before Christopher Columbus in 1492. The book presents evidence of African navigation, cultural exchanges, the impact of civilizations in Native American societies. And it explores various aspects, which include shipbuilding, cultural analogies, and the transmutation of plants and animals between continents, because there are some things that are found here now that are, of course, not native to here, and figuring out how all this stuff got here. So in this next one, we're gonna do a short little video. Hope y'all pay attention and hope you like it. It's a little old, but it's okay.
Good evening. Ask any youngster, or any adult for that matter, when did Africans first come to America? And the answer will be in 1619 as indentured servants. Well, that answer is no longer valid, according to Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, author of They Came Before Columbus. Dr. Van Sertima, anthropologist and historian, is a graduate of London University and Rutgers Graduate School of Anthropology. He is also a literary critic and has been honored by the Nobel Committee of the Swedish Academy by being asked to nominate candidates for the Nobel Prize in Literature for the past 5 years. Currently, he is Professor of African Studies at Rutgers University. Dr. Van Sertima, up until relatively recently, what had scholars been saying about Africans in the pre-Columbus period in the Americas?
Well, there is a very profound distortion of African history. Almost all of the books that have been written on Africa have been studies of primitives, of people in small communities just barely scratching the soil, people in jungles, etc. There is no appreciation of the fact that after the conquest, or just around the time of the conquest and after, you have a tremendous breaking up of African societies. It's not just a question of tearing these people out of their country, throwing them across the Atlantic as slaves, but the smashing of many things. It's as if you had dropped several hydrogen bombs in Africa. So that what you see afterwards is just the remnants, the ruins of the worst in Africa. The African, therefore, the image of the African ancestors being built up upon the lowest common denominator. When we go back to European history, European heritage, we always go back to its great heroes, its magnificent achievements. But when we go back into Africa, historians and anthropologists have always looked for the worst. When in fact, you begin to study African history seriously, and recent archaeological discoveries are now throwing up remarkable things. They're found within recent years, for example, that the Africans were producing steel in Tanzania, East Africa, 1,500 years before the Europeans. That they had not only entered the age of iron before Europe, but they had jumped into the age of steel. Now what has happened to this? If you go back into Tanzania today, you cannot find this. You cannot find that kind of development. Therefore, you begin to be aware that colonization, the conquest of Europe, didn't drag people up. It actually smashed things that were happening then. Now these things are coming out of the earth because archaeology is beginning to recover these things. African history cannot be recovered, and even American history, early history, cannot be recovered like European history, because Europe has had the advantage after the conquest of having about 5 centuries of fairly settled history. They can go into their libraries, etc., in spite of the wars. But in Africa, the library is in the ground. The record of what has happened, the broken record lies there. Now they're finding astronomical observatories. 2 years ago, they found that Africans were involved in the most complex astronomy, that they had plotted a whole star system. This in Kenya, Tunga, they found among the Dogon in West Africa that Africans had plotted an invisible star 700 years before it was discovered by European astronomers in the 20th century, and that the plotting of the orbit and trajectory of this star, which is a white dwarf, an invisible star, seriously, the trajectory and plotting, the plotting of the orbits and trajectories are as accurate as that done by satellites in the 20th century. Recently, yesterday, in fact, just before I came here, the New York Times brought out a startling article showing that the Africans have entered the domestication of cattle in East Africa 7,000 years before it occurred anywhere else in the world. And this is one of the bases. This is one of the bases of civilization. So that you have to look again at the African. It is because the capacity of the African, the potential of the African, has been reduced in our imagination and our consciousness by these studies of primitive realized that the African was involved in things that are just as important, just as significant, and in some areas even more significant than what was happening in Europe before the Industrial Revolution.
What is the main idea in your book, They Came Before Columbus?
The main idea in my book is to show that early America before the coming of Columbus, was a far more complex society than we can imagine, and that it involved Africans. Africans came in here. They came in on several occasions. Sometimes these were accidents, sometimes they were on purpose, and that they had an influence, an actual impact, an influence upon the formation of certain American civilizations.
And we say pre-Columbus, pre-wait, what are we talking about?
We're talking about long before 1492. It is absurd, and only fools can still believe that Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492. In fact, Columbus never even came to this continent. Columbus wandered about in the Caribbean islands, just on the very edge of great civilizations. Cortez came here in 1590, and he entered Mexico. Mexico, when I speak of Mexico in this program, do not confuse it simply with the Mexico we know today. That was the center of the civilization that spread over a great part of this continent. That, when Cortez entered, he had come out of the heart of Europe, and he said when he entered Native America, then he entered Mexico, and he saw the pyramids and the palaces, and the floating gardens, and the zoos, and the aqueducts, and the running paths. He says, I have not seen its like in Europe.
So, main idea in your book, you deal with that initially.
The main idea in my book is that there were visits to this continent from the old world, that there were visits to the Native Americans in this continent, and those visits included Africans. And two of the visits of Africans were major and significant, that they affected American civilization. American civilization was far more complex, far more advanced than was formed. Our satellites a few months ago revealed that the Native Americans, long before the coming of the Europeans, had the most intricate network of information ever discovered.
All right, I know it was kind of long, but I felt like I had to get everything in there. I do have time. I just want to ask just somebody a question. What did they think about the video?
It was good.
Thought it was good, actually.
I think it was interesting. A lot of, or some of the stuff I have heard before, like people claiming that like Christopher Columbus, he never even made it to the Americas, or just the idea of somebody discovering a land where people already are. My parents used to always say like, "What you mean you found it? It was never lost." That type of idea. So I can most definitely see where he's coming from when he says that people were already here. Good.
Thank you, Tasia, helping me out here. So as y'all can see, Dr. Ivan was very passionate about studies and theories and all the evidence that he had, such as cultural and artistic influence. Oh, I'm sorry, Pastor.
Even in that philosophy, they try to, some of them try to dismiss the middle passage, basically saying the Africans came from America that was instituted into slavery because of this theory that we were already here. So it takes a turn to another degree of study, which I don't buy into that because of all the evidence of the Portuguese in the slave camps in Africa. But they tried to say the Africans that they enslaved here were already Americans from his teaching. So that's another angle of it.
It is.
It's another angle that
It's easy looking into all this to go into a rabbit hole. So you kind of have to have a light to kind of guide you. But to go off what Pastor said, this book that we had a long time ago. It's our First Peoples. It's the 6th, 7th edition. And it delves into all the Native American tribes that were here. And they were all over America and Canada. And the book, it was really good. It goes back to, I believe, the early 600s, 700s in America, or what they call America today, North America. But it's a really good read. To go further with Dr. Ivan, he has in his book is architecture, botanical, skeletal data, and other things that highlight and show that Africans arrived much more than just slaves, but also traders and other things of that nature. All right, y'all. Now, if y'all been here before, y'all know I gotta ask somebody some questions. So in the short video, Dr. Ivan spoke about Tanzania in East Africa. What were they producing, and how long before Europe did they do it? Put your hand down, Savannah. Don't know. Ain't nobody pay attention. You can't answer, Brother Davis.
Oh, okay.
You in the program.
Okay.
Don't nobody know what they was producing? Ooh. It's only the A slide, y'all. Still, do you remember how long before Europeans? Ooh, jeez. I know y'all full. I am too, but nobody knows. No. All y'all fired, and it's okay. Since you got a partial right answer, I'm gonna make you. Don't clap because don't clap. But at least she didn't better than there. None of y'all knew, so I guess this you learned to yeah. And that's why I got 4 more to give away. Cause y'all ain't about to have me up here talking and then not learning nothing.
Oh, that's right.
So somebody pay attention to something. All right.
Pay attention to them slides.
So the Olympic heads that are up here was one of the things that Dr. Ivan had in his book. One of the many archaeological findings that he had that said, another layer of proof on how the Olympic heads were designed. They had Ethiopian type braids, African clay sculptures, reflected the coloration and texture of African hair, skeletal evidence, ancient maps, pyramids, and all that good jazz. So the book, it gives a little bit more in depth. So if you really want to find out more about it, it is a really good book.
I have seen those heads.
Yeah.
They kind of spread it about.
Yep.
Like some, I think they found one in China and some other places where they kind of scattered about, and they were saying that Africans was there.
Yep.
That could be true. It could not. It could just be a god, a deity that they probably made a thing out of. I'm not quite sure. But,
Well, you're not wrong. They do. I think it's like 20 or so heads that they found around the world, but they all have a connection, which comes back to America before America, and that's the connection that they have. So we started with Dr. Ivan to kind of initiate the conversation and present other narratives other than we came on slave ships and we slaves and all the stuff that come around here. The major issue that I had, which I told you I was going down a whole lot of rabbit holes, was focusing, because this topic is so large. There's so many branches of Africa. You got North Africa, East, West, and you got I don't even know how many countries. And, thank you, 50 countries, present day countries. That does not include all the other ancient civilizations that came before. So it's a lot. So I wanted to kind of highlight that and highlight that the oral history, studying Africa and all those things, because they pass out a lot of things orally. So they have scripts, they have books, they have writings, but a lot of our stuff is passed down through oral. Does anybody know or heard of Basil Davidson? No? Okay, so he is a white British professor who wrote over 30 books on African history and politics. And what sparked his interest was apartheid. Anybody familiar with apartheid? No? Okay. And so he wrote books and articles about it, how that So on this slide, it's not as long, please pay attention. It is interesting if you pay attention.
Just over 100 years ago, a wandering prospector, a German origin called Karl Mahler, searching for gold, came through these remote hills on a long trail and stumbled on this. He was the first white man ever to see it. And what he found, though he didn't know, were the largest man-made structures in any part of old Africa, south of the Valley of the Nile. What were these mysterious ruins found so unexpectedly in the far interior of Africa? About the ancient history.
Can y'all hear me?
No.
Because it's up coming from up there.
Yeah. It's not coming from the,
It's coming from up
it's
there.
coming from.
And I don't want to change it and mess up something.
It's too bad. Oh,
Just let it go.
let it play.
Can you hear it back, Deacon?
I can hear it a little bit,
You
but
can turn
not
this
much.
up. Where's the white?
It's already up.
It says volume. John Will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all.
All right. That's good. Go ahead. Just be quiet.
Because nothing was remembered in the outside world or even known. Today, at last, we're beginning to learn. We know now that these great buildings stood at the heart of a powerful black kingdom. Within these almost overwhelming walls, the kings lived in royal seclusion, adding to their mystery according to the nature of kings. Invested with their religious as well as their temporal power, they were believed to embody the whole welfare of their people. A stone-built city in the heart of Africa, and yet the white people who first saw it were so blinded by their prejudices that they could not believe the evidence of their own eyes. Rather than face the possibility that Africans might have a history of their own, they fabricated exotic explanations and imagined fantastic rites in honor of faraway monarchs like King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. The famous German philosopher Friedrich Hegel had set the tone. Though he'd never been to Africa and knew nothing of its people, this was his publicly expressed opinion in 1831.
This is the land where men are children, a land lying beyond the daylight of self-conscious history and enveloped in the black cover of night. At this point, let us forget Africa, not to mention it again, for Africa is no historical part of the world.
Hegel was not alone. His views were echoed widely. An English explorer who did know Africa and had studied some of its customs and languages, Richard Burton, had this to say.
The study of the Negro is the study of man's rudimental mind. He would appear rather a degeneracy from the civilized man than a savage rising to the first step, were it not for his total incapacity for improvement. He has not the ring of the true metal. There is no rich nature for education to cultivate. He seems to belong to one of those childish races never rising to man's estate, who fall like worn-out links from the great chain of animated nature.
Another famous explorer, Samuel Baker, who passed through this very district in his search for the source of the Nile, wrote in his memoirs,
Human nature, viewed in its crudest state as seen amongst African savages, is quite on the level with that of the brute, and not to be compared with the noble character of the dog. There is neither gratitude, pity, love, or self-denial, no idea of duty, no religion, nothing but covetousness, ingratitude, selfishness, and cruelty.
in a manner which seems quite unforgivable today. Europeans in the 18th and 19th centuries preferred to forget what their forebears had known very well. That kingdoms flourished in West Africa which were as sumptuous and as well governed
Does anybody have any comments or anything to say about the video?
Yes.
Go ahead, Elder.
It shows you a lot of the pagan stuff that we was into, the idol worship that a lot of our ancestors was into, with the painting of the face and the little decorative things and everything like that. We were into a lot of things. Not to say that it was, it's bad, but because we know God now. But when we did not know God, this is what we were accustomed to, or things of that nature. So all this idol worship and things that we see here was a deep history. It was our heritage. It was things that we was caught up in. So I look at that, and when I see it, I say, I thank God for calling us out of some of those things, because we could have been caught up in a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah, that is true. But the main thing I want to highlight, if y'all were, I'm sorry.
Number one was named Richard Burke. Was that the guy?
Virgin, Heigl,
1831.
and Baker. Yeah.
And Baker. The ideology that they came back with is the ideology that the world took off with.
Right.
And this is the problem that dispels who we really are. It's like a big gap, because we took the European ideology and we progressed it, and that's what we think we are. But we were greater than what those two men perceived and took back and explained what they had sung. And you go all the way back to when we were children, the movie Tarzan. We was always portrayed as uncivilized, run around with bones in our nose, no kind of coordination, moral sense of value. We was just out there in the woods chasing the jumping from trees. And this is one of the narrative that we have to destroy, because we are the people that set the paradigm for civilization. And I believe we're going to touch on that. What we all need to do is study the Moors, because they were the nucleus for how the world came into civilization. We taught folks how to wash up and stink all day long. They didn't even know they stank until they got around us. If you want to know the truth, study history. We showed them how to put perfume, makeup, and beauty products. They was like, they didn't know all of that. And if you hang around with all of them, you're going to see they don't know that. I travel all over the world. Those folks don't bathe and all. Go ahead. They don't. They don't bathe. They will not bathe.
It also shows us that if we were left alone without other people trying to dictate to us how to live, our civilizations was thriving. It was thriving a lot better than some of the European civilizations. We were thriving. So it's not that we were dumb, we were very smart and educated. It was just certain things that I look at when I look at those videos. I say, all right, now some of that stuff is a little weird. But they were thriving people.
Yeah, I will dwell on that for 2 seconds. As far as the religion aspect, Africa's a huge continent.
Yes,
So you
it is.
had the ones who did the idol worship, you had Muslims, you had Christianity. So what their religion was based on what region they were in and what they were, previously exposed to, but they did. And to expound on Pastor, y'all both said something that's coming up in. Brother David's actually going to do a presentation about the Moors. But what I wanted to highlight from the video in particular was the narrative. They didn't have Facebook, they didn't have the internet, they only had other people's words to go by. And they were white, respected men. And so they took what they saw, called it impossible, and that's what Pastor said, the narrative that they still push today. And to show the readings, what he said in the video were readings from their memoirs and from books that they actually wrote those things in. And I know y'all remember their names, but if you want to know their names, you actually look up their memoirs and what they wrote. So much of what those men wrote was absolutely crazy. They were so dismissive of everything that they saw, because they were like, there's no way that these colored folk over here did anything like that. So I just want to highlight that.
So, biblically, we also have to, for those who know Bible history, everything started in Africa. Don't just take it as base knowledge. You got Nimrod, who was a black king, and created a great kingdom. Under Nimrod, they tried to build that tower. That took civilization and togetherness to do that. Everything that's biblically in the Old Testament is from Africa. God even instilled wisdom in a whole lot of people. The iron he gave all those people that helped Moses, he gave them the spirit of wisdom to be iron makers and how to mold and make. All of that stuff transferred on to the generations and generations. All that's over in Africa. Everything stemmed from Africa. If you look at all the rivers from the Garden of Eden, you can trace those to where those are at in Africa. Those 3 rivers those 4 rivers, they still exist. Everything, civilization, wisdom, everything started in Africa before Europe and all that even was, before even Europe was even formed. So everything started in Africa. Take that as rich history and not just as surface knowledge. It all started in Africa.
Also, I don't know if you have it in the presentation, if you look at the name Africa, and you go and research it, it means the place of life, birth. It means the place of birth. Africa means the place of birth. You extend it to mankind. The rivers they referred to are still there. So we understand possibly the garden was located there. That's another whole story, but Africa was the center of the universe. If you study Africa, it's the only continent that does not move on a atomic plate. It's set. It's the only set.
That has moved.
And others move around. It's the only continent that does not move on atomic plates. People don't know that. It's the only.
I think just one of the parts that was in the video where it was when the guy came up and he saw the stone civilization where they made their city out of stone. And right then they started adding their theology to that stone city. So they started adding things to that stone city, which it might not have nothing to do, it didn't have nothing to do with the purpose of why that was the way it was. And this is where the change came from, is because they saw something magnificent that they wanted to add that was a custom. So now they wanted to add their flavor on the give explanations to why that city was built out of stone that much. So yeah.
So y'all taking all my thunder, but they ain't lying. So yes, life started in Africa. That's just what it is. And even those white men, they all have a consensus about that, which is contradictory to what they write further, because we all know you ain't in Africa with no light skin, because that don't even make sense. But anyway, so Matobo Hills in Zimbabwe is, they back to what they said as far as where they found some of the earliest human remains and sites discovered. And then Matobo Hills, they have over 3,000 sites of rock and art painting that are nowhere else in the world, and the colors they use and the range of colors they use have never been seen anywhere else in the world. So that's in Zimbabwe, and it's about 770 square miles. I'm gonna try one more. This is a super easy question. The only y'all got 4 or 5 options that was up on the screen. Name one issue or problem that comes from studying Africa.
Issue?
Yeah, an issue or problem on why it's hard to study Africa.
It's hard to study because it's been whitewashed. It's been spoken through white civilization of when they went over and looked at what was going on, and then they walked back, and then they changed the narrative of what they saw.
Thank you, Elder Little. Somebody came. Ain't nobody else raised their hand and said nothing. Oh, we gotta start. I didn't see your hand.
Go ahead.
She messing with me. She ain't. I'm right here. I think she messing with me.
No, the only thing I want to say about that is that because their minds couldn't take in why they could do what they do, then they had to believe that it could have been someone of color that lived there when all around with people of color, who came looking and laughing? You know, and the fact that when they, the explorers and people, they went to other countries, they accepted where they was at, what their culture was, and they didn't try to change it or try to erase it because their skins were a lighter color. So they can say, oh yeah, they could probably do this, but if your skin is different, it's like, I couldn't possibly have done that. You know, negative thinking even from the beginning, or like you said, people say, you know, well, y'all go back to Africa. Well, you all go back to Europe. I mean, you came here and you mistreated the people that were already here. Like you said, you didn't find or discover America. So you see your history page because you don't understand, you don't want to take the time to understand the nature of your history. And like they said, they did give one amount of credit, and that was slaves here to have Indians help them to be able to live through that. And then they plant and then as soon as that was over, Thanksgiving, they went back together. You know, so I think if they try not, they don't want to accept something they can't explain as to why this is the way it is. Even down to the pyramids in Africa, that, you know, and other things that were.
I always trying to take my thunder.
And other things that were made, you know, that defy the era that they lived in, no machine, no this, no that. Even down to Pharaoh saying make brick without straw, and how they defy what they need to do, you know, what they did. So it's just a misunderstanding and not thinking that someone else can do something that you can't do or that you've seen your race of people or your ethnic people be able to do so that if you don't do it, they make somebody else of a color.
Yeah, and then another, that is true, and another thing that Basil Davis said in his video, and actually that clip is from a series of videos that he has. They're about an hour and 10 minutes long a piece, and it's like 4 or 5 parts. It's really, really interesting. It's on YouTube, it's free. But how he highlighted how they all work together. It was a point in time when Europe came and they all worked together. That's the day before they was going to do wars in Spain, how they did a lot of stuff previously together. And it was, I can't remember the date that they gave us in my research when that flipped, when the tide turned. Most of it was around the slave time, but it was before then too, where they pinpointed the shift to where whites and blacks and everybody just worked together and shared information. And it was a real blend of community versus what it is now. So, but you did take my thunder because we talked about Egypt. So, like you said, we know origins of life started in Africa. And today we're going to do a few areas. We're going to do the Nubian Empire, Egypt, Ethiopia, the Moorish, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. So Nubia, I'm going to kind of go through these kind of quick because I don't want to hold y'all too long today. So Nubia is divided into 4 periods: Pre-Kerma, Kerma, Napata, and Meroic. Pre-Kerma, so they were farmers and traders, and the Bible refers to this area as the area of Kush. Is anybody familiar with that? Alright. And they had a lot of accomplishments and things, and one thing I want to highlight is that ignored due to greater interest in Egypt. But a lot of these whatever civilizations, they're all intertwined. And so while the focus is on Egypt, which we'll talk about later, is because Egypt is one of the more whitewashed countries in Africa, which I still don't know how they figured that Egypt wasn't in Africa. But that's a whole other book too. And so the Fufa is where now I think I pronounced this right, but it's located in modern Sudan. And it's a temple that predates back to 1750 BC and is considered to be one of the oldest man-made structures in sub-Saharan Africa. And it rises about 65 feet high. It's made from sun-dried mud bricks. It had a series of chambers and courtyards, and they believed it was used for religious activities and rituals and different ceremonies. And this is common to their architectural style. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And that's the rest of it. And they said it was, excavations were led by Charles Bonnet, and they uncovered a whole lot of artifacts, pottery, religious icons and tools, and it all gave different insight into the Kerma civilization. Another Egyptologist, which was George Reisner, he was very popular around America white culture. He was from, I think, Philadelphia, I believe, where he didn't believe that the Kerma people had been capable of constructing such a site, and he had assumed that the Egyptians either did it for them or something of that nature. But if they go by archaeological evidence, it predates the Egyptian pyramids. So y'all can delve into that if you want to. And in all of my studies, they kept talking about the Nubian gold mines and how Nubia was one of the places that a lot of the other surrounding civilizations got their gold. The Nephilim period, and that was in the kingdom of Kush, they had the EKKTAC. So the EKKTAC was a reprint. It was one paper, and King Shabaka reprinted that, or redid it on that paper. And it's shown right here. And then that's Spencer for Shabaka. And that's like a paper papyrus reporting of what's on the text. And it's messed up here at the bottom because somewhere along the way it got lost and someone was using it as a mill to grind on. So they messed it up, but if you get a better picture of it, those inscriptions of that paper are all on that stone too. And it's also called the Menophyte Theology. And of course that's in the British Museum in Europe on display. Meroe, that's another part of Nubia, that began after the Syrians conquered Egypt, and they relocated to Meroe. They had palaces, observatories, temples, pools, fountains. They traded ivory, slaves, rare skins, ostrich feathers, copper. It was a major trade center. It had over 200 pyramids. That's at that picture at the bottom. No, I thought I had another picture. So they had, it was 3 parts of the cemetery. It was, it had three parts. One were like the royalty, and the other third part was for the elite of that time. And Giuseppe Ferlini, he was believed to have used explosives to hunt for treasures in the pyramids. And it was said that he only found gold in one of the pyramids. So he messed up all that for one pyramid of gold. And that's basically what they did. They were very careless and destructive. Their main focus in Africa was to take their resources. It wasn't to learn, it wasn't to build, it wasn't to do anything but take and destroy. So I want to say that. Now, back with the people of Meroe, they had friendly relations with the Greeks. They built temples, they lived together. They had queens which shared their political power. And this one is of, now I know I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, Shenedekete. It was the first African queen of Nubia. And Queen Amenesheketo, now I think I pronounced that right too. Oh no, oh no. Okay, short video y'all.
Kings are buried in the pyramids of Meroe. After the 4th century BC, a series of strong queens occupied the throne and may have been co-regents. One of the most powerful ruled near the time of Christ, just before the Temple of Dan Gale was
carrying bows and arrows. These are traditionally the accoutrements of a man. She's got prisoners tied up. There's a good possibility that she actually fought off the Romans.
In 23 BC, Roman soldiers attacked the Nubian kingdom. According to their accounts, the Nubian resistance was led by a valiant woman, blind in one eye, who scholars believe may be Amani Sheketo. The queen successfully stopped the Romans from overtaking the kingdom, and even brokered a favorable peace treaty. Though faint, traces of Amani Sheketo's imposing figure can still be seen on the walls of her offering chapel.
She's a larger woman, so it shows how powerful she is. It's also part of the Meroitic impression of beauty. She's well-fed. She's wearing a lot of bracelets on her arms, rings on her fingers. She would have been covered in gold. She was a very lucky lady to have a lot of this jewelry.
Amani Sheketo's royal cache first came to light in 1834, when an Italian explorer, Giuseppe Ferlini, traveled to the Sudan, eager, as he claimed, to make some useful contribution to history. In fact, he was really searching for gold. Ferlini hoped to make a fortune selling antiquities back in Europe. His greed led him to the pyramid fields of Meroe. According to his diary, Ferlini directed his workmen to dismantle Amani Sheketo's tomb at nearly 100 feet high, one of the best preserved in the cemetery. While his men labored under the punishing rays of the desert sun, Ferlini took it easy in the shade. The excitement began when a faithful servant summoned him from the top of the pyramid.
I got up and raced over, my heart filled with hopes of some delightful adventure.
At the summit, Ferlini reported that his men had discovered a chamber hidden beneath the stones. From within emerged a bronze bowl filled with objects wrapped in cloths of linen. Ferlini had hit the jackpot.
As it became evening, I brought the discovered objects to my tent, and after all the servants had given over to sleep, I pulled out the precious objects and studied them with my soul filled with joy. I admired the gold, and on seeing the quantity of it, I realized it had to exceed greatly all that which I knew was spread through the museums of Europe.
Ferlini had discovered a dazzling hoard of jewels. Today, much of this cache is housed in Munich's Egyptian Museum. Gold bracelets covered with decorative bands of fused glass. Ornamental pendants bearing images of the gods. And dozens of heavy gold rings, some incised with the figure of Amun.
This is one of the greatest treasures ever found in Nubia. It gives us a very good idea of what the kings and the queens would have been wearing at the time.
Though Ferlini's raid did bring the incredible cache to light, a price was paid for the discovery. The explorers' ruthless quest for gold destroyed Amani Sheketo's pyramid.
So that's what the pyramid looks like today after he blew it up. Any comments on the video? No? Okay.
Nice.
So as y'all see, a lot of the, hold on, a lot of the stuff that they did was not for preservation. It was merely for money. So I just wanted to highlight that again.
And that's the part of it that whenever you look at the archaeology studies of Africa, they mostly tell you about the treasures, the things that they took out of Africa. They don't talk about the culture that the treasure was found in and the sophisticated mathematics of the architecture of the buildings and the tombs that they raided and how complex they was and why they stand for thousands of years. Only thing they tell you is we took all this gold and it's in our museum and we own it. That's mostly all you hear about took out of it.
Yep.
And they still taking stuff out.
I agree. I mean, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Oh,
She was also with what's the Egyptian gods? Was it Amun-Ra and Amun-Ra and them? So they kind of had her together, kind of like entwined with them some type of weird little way in history. So she was a very powerful woman. So yeah, for that time period, yes, she was a very powerful woman. But yeah.
That's the same thing as for they just do for the riches. Is the same thing that people do today. Those with little authority and those with money. They're only concerned about the money. They're not concerned about people. And this morning in our Sunday school, Sister Kelly was saying there's a place in South Africa that Caucasian people bought that they don't want blacks on that property. And, you know, I can't remember the name of the whole thing, but, you know, that just stood out that even if you were born in Africa of white descent because your people went there, you know, still for you to have the nerve to do that in someone else's country, you know, it just shows you how falsely in their mind, really, they will have us thinking so falsely about things. They're thinking that they've got this and that, just like the man who born in the Bible, you know, was just overflowing. He can only feel from others. You know, and his soul was going to be required of him that night. Then somebody else going to enjoy all that you had, that you didn't really enjoy or want to share because there's dollar signs, you know, in their ear, in their eyes. And, you know, the same way was that even in Ghana when we were there, when you went to where the slave trade, the castles and things were, where you could still smell the stench in the walls of the material, because a six this size room, you may have 100, 200 people, 150 men in one, women in the other, with no lights, no windows, no bathroom facilities, where you were, where everything was done. You know, just the cruelty, but,
Yep. And I mean, historically, Europeans have done a good job of recording the foolishness that they do. And no offense, I don't know. For me, I don't know why people are surprised because this is what they've been done historically, and they keep good records of what they've done. And anywhere that they go, this is what those type of people tend to do. So Africa, they did it in America. Like I said, this whole book, it shows you the slow progression of how they arrived on the East Coast, and how they took over all of North America and gave them now where they got 10, 20 reservations with American Indians on them now, but they had this whole continent. So this just kind of what they do.
I want to add something.
Yeah.
When the battlefield was an even playing field, when it was war, they wouldn't have never took over those areas if they didn't have an advantage. The advantage that Caucasians had is that they had different weaponry.
They had guns.
They had guns.
When the guns came,
But when the battlefield was all the same, there's nothing they could have did with it.
That's why they worked together.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have an advantage. And then gunpowder came along, they said bang bang shoot them dead, and here we go.
Here we go.
All right, y'all. So this is an easy one. Who did they believe from the video that Queen Amenemhat defeated?
Roman. Can nobody raise their hand?
Ain't neither one of y'all raise your hand.
The Roman.
So who get it? Cause that's my question. I gotta give it to my mom. Cause I gotta deal with it. Did you remove your motion?
He really answered first.
Right. saw a few more hands go up with that answer, but it was the easy one. So, y'all get a half of credit. Well, at least you remember. So the next area we're gonna talk about real quick is Ethiopia, and they call it the Ascom Kingdom, and it was an ancient state that helped to form modern day Ethiopia. And translated, it means burnt face or red brown. And it began in 500 after the end of the Kush Empire, which we talked about first in Nubia, and originates from the cultural and economic exchange between Africans and people of Arabia. The capital city was Adulis, and if you see the little purple little mark on there, how it was strategically located between the, what's it called? Oh no, the Red and Indian Sea. So they did a lot of trades and things of that nature there. And this is where the story of Queen Sheba and Solomon came from, if anybody's familiar with that too. And if you go through textbooks and things of that nature, a lot of the stuff from the Bible is considered mythical and imaginary and made up. But we all know you can, like they said, you can trace everything back in the Bible to modern day times and trace everything back. So we know it's real. And Ethiopia's most famous king was King Izana, and he converted to Christianity. The stone obelisk, he left a lot of monuments and inscriptions and things of that nature. And I'm gonna move on. This is a short video again, so y'all can see it. right, y'all. Any comments or questions on the video real quick?
I didn't know he was the one that overthrew the Kush Empire. And he was the conqueror of the Kush Empire, which is an empire that we have allowed history to basically erase. But really, the Kush Empire is one that we should go back and really study and build it back up, because the Kush Empire was almost the foundation of that region. They were the empire that got it under what I call civilized monarchy or government, the Kush Empire. And I didn't know he was the one that overthrew them.
And in that, they rebuilt international relations, and they were responsible for building 11 churches built into the mountains in the capital, and they were overthrown by the Solomonic dynasty, who justified their position through the line of King Solomon. And I don't know if any of y'all recognize, I would say his name wrong, Haile Selassie. He's believed to be the last in the line of King Solomon. And he died in 1964 or 74 under mysterious circumstances. But he was believed to be in the last line of King Solomon. And I promise y'all, this is a short video. This is about the churches of Lalibela. Anybody familiar with those?
They greet the day of Christ's birth amid a living recreation of biblical. They greet the day of Christ's birth. They greet the day of Christ's birth amid a living recreation of biblical.
Well, anywho,
they greet the day of Christ's birth amid a living recreation of biblical settings and stories. Here at Lalibela, faith is built on rock.
this was one of my favorite ones.
They greet the day of Christ's birth amid a living recreation.
It's okay. I'm gonna just show y'all the picture. So the church, the picture at the bottom is a map. So the churches of Lalibela, y'all should really look at this, really interesting. All the churches were carved out of the rock in the mountain in Ethiopia. And there's 11 churches, and they're all connected by tunnels. And King Lalibela is the one who constructed this, because he thought he was trying to build like a new Jerusalem. So he has like Mount St. Olive and a couple of other things from the Bible, and all the churches, like I said, are built and carved out of the rock, and it's 11 churches. So I thought that was interesting, but my video won't play. So our next section to talk about, we only got a few more, and I'm gonna let y'all go, is Egypt. And as I said, Egypt has a whole lot of stuff coming out of there, and we're gonna have Deaconess Little give us a presentation.
My people, the Egyptians, which was people of color, we made many contributions to science, writing, art, and engineering. This included papyrus, which is paper-like material that was used for writing over 3,000 years. Also, we invented hieroglyphs, an essential writing system with numbers, letters, and symbols. We are the inventors of eye makeup, invented around 4,000 home, that embalming, that was us. It was a long and expensive process, but it's still used. Yes, this is part of my people. One thing that I love about the Egyptians that I would love to share with you, we had Emotu. He was a master architect who built the first pyramid. He was a philosopher, a priest, an astrologer, a prime minister, an engineer, a teacher, and a chef, a chief physician to the king. We had King Khufu, who built pyramids in Giza. We had King Khafre, who built smaller pyramids in the Sphinx. And did you know about the Book of Wise Instruction, which contained Egyptian moral philosophy? Yes, this is my people. Not only that, I don't know if you're aware, but we practice and produce craftsmen for professions: clothes weaving, woodwork, glass, leatherwork, pottery, even gold mining, silver, copper, brass, and bronze. We use plenty of materials and metals and form techniques that help with stamping and your hammering tools like mullets, saws, drills, and many others. And of course, that thing you don't like in school, you know, geometry. Yes, we created that. So if you hear pi, you would think of me. Right? Right. And another thing, you know how you have days of a week and something called a calendar? Yes, that was us. 365 days a year, your first solar calendar. Well, you don't have to take it from me, because there is so much history and accomplishment from our people, right? That we even have a museum that's dedicated to it. So you can go to the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt, in our home, that covers over 120,000 Egyptian idols. And yes, I am your people.
All right, I knew I could count on Deacon this little. I knew I could. You heard another round of applause. That was good. That was real good. I forgot my question. I did. I gotta make up one real quick. Do y'all remember how many churches I said it was at Lollybella?
Yeah.
All right, somebody listen. 11. She already had one.
I ain't got none said.
Girl, you gonna get it if you want.
Selena got it.
Alright, so as Deaconess Little so wonderfully expressed, the world owes not just Egypt but Africa as a whole a big debt because of all the contributions that, of course, we can't begin to name in this program. And the Eurocentric, the colonialism, and all the things that we kind of touched on today, it really diminishes the contribution that Africa has played in our world. Like they said, life came from there. So how can you diminish that, right? So just want to emphasize how important we are because of who they were, and not to just focus on slavery. Yes, isn't important, but what came before and how we was. If y'all paid a little bit of attention, we did a whole lot. And I wish y'all would have seen that video, but it's so much stuff that the continent of Africa has done and accomplished that we have no excuse not to be great today. We have all this technology, all this knowledge, all this everything at our fingertips. They did all this without cranes, without the internet, without Google, without all this stuff we have. So there's no reason that we should be running around here looking dry and looking dry. We gotta get our life together, y'all. Cause the people who came before us was the sugar honey iced tea, as y'all saw. They did their thing, they did it good. Okay? So we're gonna move on to the last three. We almost done. It's Songhai, Mali, and Ghana.
There you go.
Now we only touched on the two kind of top parts of Africa. Because if I did the whole thing, we'd be here for 5 days. So we gonna hit on Ghana a little bit. I heard him. We go over in Ghana. He always talking about, I don't want to be here either. Not that long. Songhai, Mali, and Ghana, they overlap in time and space. So as we go through each one, you're going to kind of see how they all, from Ghana, you got to Mali, and then from Mali, turned into Songhai, how they kind of intertwine with each other. So Ghana was the land of gold. Once again, they always run in Africa for all the resources that they had. And it was, they have everything there. You couldn't go there and not come out with something. And the Mali Empire. I want you to be ready. So the Mali Empire came right after Ghana, and they overlapped. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. It was a flourishing of the empire for three major reasons, which I want to touch on. They taxed on trade. They had goods that were brought and sold at higher prices, and then they had so many natural resources they didn't have to outsource anything. They exported. They didn't have many imports. So they were able to grow their empire so much because of those three reasons. And we have Jasmine Hartley coming up here to give us a small presentation on my summer subject.
The person I'm talking about is Mansa Musa Keita I. He is considered to be one of the richest individuals in history. Mansa means emperor or sultan. He built Mali into one of the largest empires in the world with a population of about 10 million. It stretched over parts of Senegal, Guinea, Niger, and other parts. Under his rule, he famously made the pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 with 60,000 men, soldiers, baggage men, friends, doctors, and teachers, political leaders, and royal secretaries to record his trip. 80 to 100 camels carried gold, which he distributed generously throughout his journey. The gold he gave away contributed to the growth of many religions he traveled through. That gold was from the gold mines of that region, and the Mali Empire had a monopoly over the distribution and production of the gold. Under his reign, the University of St. Croix in Timbuktu was built and still stands today. Under his rule, Timbuktu flourished to becoming the major center of trade. Gold, ivory, salt, and other available commodities. The university brought intellectuals from all over the world.
Good job, Jasmine.
Comment on this, have y'all mentioned it? This man's wealth, this king's wealth, was immeasurable. They said he was probably 4 times as wealthy as Elon Musk. He has so much wealth. He's probably the richest man ever lived. They couldn't measure it. I just want to
And she didn't, I don't know if I wrote it in there, but the goal, he had like 80, they said 80 to 100 camels on his trip with him. Where he was just giving it away. And they were saying it took years for certain regions to recover the gold prices because he given it so much away. So you're right, they didn't know exactly how rich he was. I mean, you had 80, 100 camels of gold, you had some money. Which leads me to our last question, because we're almost done. We don't. But it is an easy one. How many people did she say that he took with him?
I don't want to cry, but I can tell.
No, who? Go ahead, Mark. How many was it? Who? You know you ain't getting that.
Okay.
What'd you say, Mark?
Was it 60,000?
Yeah, you right.
That's what, and I'm going to say.
Don't nobody else want with him.
And I'm about to say something. You ain't right. And I'm about to say it too.
I should keep it. You can give it to Jasmine. She can use that.
You can give it to me. You can give it to me.
So that's my last question, which means, y'all know, we're coming to the end. We're going to wrap it up. So the Songhai Empire began after the fall of the Mali Empire, because remember I told you all these were intertwined. They're the same region, and they kind of took over from each other. And they came into power, I do believe, because they didn't have a real good setup of succession, so they were able to overtake it. But the main thing I want to do is how he had an effective army made up of POWs and formerly enslaved men, and he put them to work in the empire. So that was another reason he was able to move and grow so fast with this empire, because they, what's it called? They reuse people in different areas. So they were able to do that, and they also instituted a system of bureaucratic government, standardized trade measures, regulations, initiated the policing of trade routes, which is very important for their growth, and they established an organized tax system, which also made a huge contribution to the growth of their empire. All right, our last discussion today is by Brother David Washington, and he's going to touch on the Moorish Empire in Spain.
Any outspoken prayer requests? No. Praise the Lord, everybody. We're going to talk about the Moors.
Yes, yes.
They say the best for last. I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the conversation. These were some great people.
Yeah.
When I learned about them, they kind of made me mad how they just did them. But let me just give you some of the facts. They contributed the most to Spain and Europe.
Yes.
I want y'all to listen very carefully about these people. Out of all Africa, they became more and more Muslim and less African, although Muslim is not a color. The term Moor was used by the Europeans to describe Muslim people with dark skin. They called them the Moors. It was kind of a degrading name. The Moors were Muslims of Berber descent from the Atlas Mountains in North Africa, which is present-day Morocco. They invaded the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain, and Portugal over a period of 800 years. Now I want y'all to listen to what they contributed. They introduced rice. What do we think about with rice? Always with China, right? They introduced rice, cotton, strawberries, sugar cane. Most sugar cane they talk about with Hawaii now. Ginger, lemon, and dates, along with other agriculture, engineering, mining, industry, and manufacturing skills. They also helped to expand commerce, architecture, and education due to 90% of Europeans being illiterate, with very few libraries and universities. They introduced the astrolabe. It was a device that measured the position of the stars and planets. They also brought the compass from dealings with China. Under the Moors, the great mosque of Cordoba, they helped build Spain, aqueduct system for irrigation. In other words, their sewage system. They helped Spain build that. Silos for grain, sewer systems, sidewalks, water reservoirs, mine for various minerals. Many of the Spanish designs we know today come from the Moors of Africa. The Moors made education universal, giving Spain more than 70 public libraries and 17 universities. They have been documented to establish the world being round. The Moors, they documented that the world was round. I didn't get taught that in school. 400 years before the Europeans. And they ruled Spain for 800 years. The building in the background is the famous Cordoba building. And here's a short video about it.
Let's be Brother David, the world is calm.
Andalusia is a place with so much history and interesting things to discover. It's a place where different cultures and religions have, and still do, influence the landscape. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the very famous mosque cathedral of Cordoba, a place where Islam and Christianity meet, and where we can experience the course of history quite literally as we walk its incredibly beautiful halls. So what is the actual history of this fascinating building? The southern parts of Spain and Portugal, often called Andalusia or Al-Andalus in Arabic, was ruled by Muslim dynasties for more than half a millennium. The Arab-led armies first entered the Iberian Peninsula in the year 711. Easier to remember.
Yeah, I see how
And
this
it was the
skin is light
Umayyad
right now.
Empire that first established its rule here, especially after Abdurrahman I was forced to flee from Damascus with the Abbasid revolt in the east.
That's all I'm gonna show. I really just wanted y'all to see the beginning of the building, because it started off as a mosque, and then over the centuries they added to it. They did other renovations, built this, built that, but the main mosque or cathedral is still there. People visit it all the time, so it's still open. It's open to the public, and like I said, it turned into a cathedral. I don't remember the year, but it went from a mosque to a cathedral to now. People still can worship there if they choose to, but it's more of a, I guess, a tourist attraction now. But the main building is still there in Spain. I just wanted to point that out. So, as I said before, we only covered the east and west northern parts of Africa. But I wanted to show y'all the other states and empires that existed, and that, as they call it, the European scramble to colonize Africa disrupted their economic, their social, and political structures, and that's what led to colonialism and, messing up Africa's rich history and diminishing it just to slaves who got taken and shipped to America. So, as y'all know, we always ended with the same thing. Lift Every Voice and Sing, which was written by James Weldon Johnson and put to music by his brother. And I don't know if y'all remember from 2023, did y'all watch the Super Bowl? Yeah. When Cheryl Lee Ralph sung it there? Yeah. That was the first time that they sung the Black national anthem at the Super Bowl. And our national anthem was a national anthem before the yeah, there you go. Thank you. Before the I couldn't even think of it. Before the Star Spangled Banner. Y'all, if y'all don't want to, y'all ain't gotta sing. Y'all want to do it?
No.
Well, I'm asking them because y'all gotta stand up and sing too. That's why the words up there. Why y'all get them to sing? So can we all close out the program? Words are here. Sister Sonia. Ready?
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. A song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
I appreciate it so much. I forgot to remind her to tell her I wanted her to sing today. So I want a double thanks to Sonia because I forgot to tell her I wanted her to sing. So, yeah. So I just wanted to give y'all a brief overview of everything, and that ain't even everything, but to maybe spark somebody interest to go and study some on your own, because it really is interesting. And it's about people that look like us. And to give you a pump, make you feel good about yourself, because they did some pretty amazing stuff. So, yeah.
Can we get the name of that video that didn't play?
Yes.
Can you set that to us? I want to go back and study.
It's the church, I'll send it to you, but it's the Churches of Lalibela.
Okay.
And it's kind of spelled how it sounds, L-A-L-I-B-E-L-L-A. But it's the Rock Churches of Lalibela. If you Google it, it'll come up. It's real interesting.
Come on, let's give Sister Beth and every participants a hand clap. I was sitting there real quick, and thinking about, you made me see the real quick, because I have a thought that I have to speak of. It's not long, but looking at what was presented here, I want to say this, is that we need to learn about our history. We cannot put it in the hands of other people to teach us about our history. Hosea says it this way, and I'm not going to preach, I just want to reference something. He said, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. I just want to take the latter part of that text. We don't understand our history because we don't take time to study it. The Moors is even more deeper. I recommend all of y'all go home and reference what the Moors have brought to Europe. And I'm going to say this, the camera's also, I can see it. This is